welcome to All Steelers Talk, your home for everything Pittsburgh Steelers, presented by allsteelers.com.
What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbein, and today I am joined by my main man, a very special guest to me, Zach Smith, host of Around the 412. Find you guys, it's every week, right? Every week you guys drop twice weekly. A week, I believe. Weekly over YouTube, all audio platforms. I watch him in the shower. I was just telling him before the thing, everybody thinks that they're famous every time you hear his voice. The all famous, the infamous Zachary Smith. We're going to talk Kenny Pickett, Steelers playoff hopes, everything in between heading into week 16. But first, as I start every show, how you feeling, my friend?
I'm good, man. I actually want to give a shout out to you and Derek, who also obviously part of this platform as well. I actually today have to go and drop off the stuff at the Salvation Army for rocking around the 412. And you and Derek have been supporters of that since we started the mission, and it obviously contributed. So I can't thank both of you guys enough. And that's kind of where I wanted to start this because, we have this nice little social media platform to connect and stuff like that. But you guys have become very good friends of mine. And I can't, on behalf of me and Tyler, tell you guys enough how much we appreciate it.
No, man, we appreciate you and all you guys do. I was going to plug that at the end here, but I'm glad that you just mentioned that. Is there still time to donate, or is it over? Is it?
No, we had to have that wrapped up this past Saturday, just because I need to know exactly how much money we had to work with. It was a little over $5,800 that was raised this year. We know for sure 23 kids that we're going to be able to help, but we're still looking for some last minute kids that we can maybe get involved, just because there's still. So I had to have those donations cut off by Saturday, but by that point, I had already bought the gifts for all the families that we already have at this point. So anything that came in like Friday, Saturday, that money we now have available to maybe help out another kid or two. So while the donations are done, not all the children have been accounted for. So nice. 25 kids or so. Last year was crazy, dude. Like 30 kids across 13 different families. We raised like $11,000 last year. But anything that we've been able to do since 2018 when we started the mission, we raised $25,000. So yeah, really good stuff. And it's all thanks to everybody that's part of it, like you and Derek.
Yeah, no doubt, dude. It's my favorite thing to donate to every year. I'm a big I don't like to get things at Christmas. I like to just give everything away, and you guys are always first on my list. I actually almost missed it this year, which I'm glad that I saw somebody share it the other day, and I was like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about this. That's my Twitter hiatus. I try to stay off there as much as possible these days because
I can relate.
Yeah, people just don't like me, you know. It is what it is what it is. But everybody go follow that. It drops every year, right?
People like June, anybody. July. No, I don't think people like anybody that covers the Steelers. First off, I want to say that. No. July, yes. So we do it was my mom's idea, actually, and she also came up with the name Rocking Around the 412 to do like a Christmas in July kickoff. So that's when we start the mission every year since the first year so year 2 was the first year that we did that. The first year, we didn't even come up with like the idea of wanting to do something until like September or something like that. So that year, we only raised like $1,500, but that was still obviously, anything people were able to do. But to see what it's grown to this point, like I said, when we got to $5,000 raised this year, we had crossed $25,000 in total raised since we started.
That's awesome. So, yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. All right, everybody go check that out. Come July, I'll make sure that I drop the link everywhere. Let's talk Steelers football. Kenny Pickett coming back against the Las Vegas Raiders Christmas Eve. This is, for some reason, the game that everybody seems to highlight. Steven highlighted it the other day. I had Nick Berlansky on here a week ago. He said the same thing. Derek, I believe, said the same thing. This is the game that worries them. If you could get past the Raiders, they feel that they could win out. Kenny Pickett's back. I want your thoughts on Kenny Pickett. And also, do you think that this is the game that the Steelers have to worry about the most?
I was going to say, I kind of share that sentiment just because of the historical context, their issues with the Raiders. Historically, the Raiders have given us trouble, whether it's at home or on the road. I also look at what the cornerback room has been like, probably the weakness. I mean, really good performance against the Panthers from the defense, but I look at the cornerback performance and say, that's probably the one thing that I can highlight in a negative way from that game. And think about a guy like Devontae Adams on the other side, who's going to give them fits regardless of if they had a strong cornerback room or not. And I think Derek Carr, who I've always been higher on, has taken a step back this year, which is odd considering You get a guy like Devontae Adams in that room. But yeah, I think like even, since the bye week, even with Cincinnati on the schedule, and everybody else, this was the one game that I was looking at like, man, this is one that I think, we really got to worry about here, just because it's just a letdown spot. I mean, you think about, they're going to have the, Franco and the Immaculate Reception stuff taking place, all the legends coming back into Pittsburgh for this night. And it's kind of setting up for that letdown on Christmas Eve. So I kind of share that sentiment as far as this being the game to worry about. And what was the other part? What was the other part of that? Because now I'm just
Kenny
stuck
Pickett,
on the Raiders.
But before we dive into Kenny, I do want to go off of that. So what's worse? Okay, so what's the worst situation for a Steelers fan? To have Christmas ruined after Franco Harris's number gets retired, the Immaculate Reception anniversary, the whole nine, or losing in week 18 to the Browns. You still had a shot going into the game, and it's your first matchup against Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, that sucks. I will say, I mean, just get me as many games that are meaningful as possible. I mean,
that's
the
what
fact
I've heard,
that, I kind of go to this is the fact that so many people, if you go on social media and just follow Steeler fans and look at their tweets throughout the season, you would think that this is like the worst season the Steelers have ever had. And the fact that we're even still talking about them having a shot at making the playoffs in a season like this is wild. So just give me as many meaningful games as possible. So I guess for that reason, I would rather have them continue to win and then lose in week 18 to the Browns, even though that would obviously suck.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you just need like some glimpse of how you could see it. So you could see it. I go off of numbers and like how many people jump in the live streams, how many people watch the YouTube channels, the audio, how many people read my articles, the whole nine. And you could tell over the last 2 weeks, like it has taken such a dramatic dip. And like, obviously it's me, I suck, but at the same time, it's people are starting to give up on the season, and that sucks to see because you never want to be in a situation, especially if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, where your fan base is like, all right, well, we're already looking on to next year, and next year there's a lot of holes, and we're going to dive into those holes, but like you want to hold on to that hope as much as possible. I think this week is a good one. You win on Christmas Eve, you get people kind of like, you get the energy flowing, and I think that moves us to Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett has an opportunity to really shine a light on himself on Christmas Eve, win against the Raiders, who are, like you said, is not going to be an easy matchup by no means defensively, but also offensively. Like you have a lot of things to overcome to beat this Raiders team, who is, I don't want to use the word red hot right now, but they look good from time to time, and sometimes they look very good. Kenny has an opportunity to come in here, make Christmas amazing for Steelers fans, which is awesome. He hasn't had an opportunity to really solidify himself this season in any big game. He's either been hurt or, for some reason or another, something has happened. This is the opportunity in my head. He comes back. What are your expectations for Kenny? You high on him going into this, or are you a little shaky after he missed a game?
No, I mean, I just hope he continues to build off what he was starting to put together prior to that injury. It's just so unfortunate because, like you said, like you're going to view him, and I think a lot of people will, based off what they do in big games. And his first shot at playing against the Ravens, unfortunately, he goes out with a concussion. Yep. So, now to come back on Christmas Eve, like I said, with Franco and honoring him, getting his number retired, all those old ex-Steelers there, all the legends in house. This is another spot for him to just kind of like put a, not stamp yet, but take a step in showing that he can be a franchise quarterback for this team. And, all eyes going to be on him, obviously, prime time on Christmas Eve, national audience. Yep. It's just funny to me that, we were talking about, and I've seen this on Twitter a little bit, not saying that you're there, or, I've even seen many people in the media say this, but it's funny to me that we were talking about, should Mason Rudolph play over Mitch Trubisky? And, now it's like, people were saying, should we even go back to Kenny Pickett after the performance Mitch Trubisky had? Like, people just search for this controversy. But yeah, I guess my hope is just Kenny Pickett was really starting to put together some nice performances following the bye week. He's never going to light it up on the box score in this offense, but not turning the football over, making plays with his legs, getting off that first read. You were starting to see some signs there, taking steps forward. It's unfortunate that he took a step back and wasn't able to play against Carolina, because especially with Carolina's defense, the way they looked in this game, that could have been another, building block opportunity. But I'm not worried about him, going in and taking the next step in what we've started to see.
Do you think that it is this offense? Do you think that's why he can't put up a big box score? Or do you think that it's the development? You know what I mean? Like there's stages to this. You can't just, especially at the quarterback position. I was one to preach all offseason. Kenny is going to suck his rookie year. 9 out of 10 offense or quarterbacks who come into the NFL suck in their first season. I think he's taken steps way quicker than I expected him to. I think he looks good. Like I consider Kenny the quarterback of the future. I'm not trying to say he's not, but do you think that it's Matt Canada? Do you still think it's Matt Canada and this offense that kind of stalls out Kenny? Or do you think it's just like, this is where he is in the process? You can't really have higher expectations.
I feel like it's kind of a cop out, but I feel like it's kind of all of it. Like I still think like Matt Canada's offense is the biggest issue. That's what I'm saying. Like I just don't think that a quarterback in this system is ever going to put up numbers that it's going to like wow you. I think that it's designed to have like a game manager type quarterback. And, you know, you look at the weapons too. I mean, if Steven Sims is your number 3 option in a passing game and you're also built, they want to run the ball. I mean, that's how they want this offense to be built. And they're starting to do so. We've seen what they've done on the ground since the bye week. So it's just, to me, not an offense where you're going to look at the box score at the end of the game and be like, wow, that quarterback really lit up the box score. And that's just, I think kind of, but him being a rookie as well, still trying to learn the NFL. People keep throwing like the pro ready thing back in people's faces that we're saying that. Being the most pro ready quarterback doesn't mean that they are NFL ready. Like it means if you needed a guy to start a game in the NFL, he was the best option to do so. But it's still the first time that he's seeing NFL defenses, and it's the largest learning curve of any position in any sport to just jump into the NFL and play quarterback.
Oh, 100%. There is nothing harder. That's why 9 out of 10 of them are good when they start off. Like you can never have the expectation of this guy's going to win a Super Bowl. It's why none of them have ever done it. Like Ben is the closest quarterback to ever get there. And I think Steelers fans, you know, myself included, I grew up a Steelers fan, and I grew up like Ben was the first quarterback I ever knew. And what I learned is that, oh, okay, these people just come in here and they're phenomenal. Like they're just Ben Roethlisberger. It is what it is. No, that's not how it works. Like you have to adjust to the NFL. Yeah. And I think Kenny Pickett's going to get there. Like I think next season, if the expectation was, okay, the Steelers should win the AFC North and they should make a run and Kenny should be a pretty good quarterback, I'd be like, yeah, you know, that's where the bar should be. But this year, I thought they've smoked the bar. Like where I had the Steelers at the beginning of the season and where I have them right now, I was like, well, I never saw this coming. Like a shot for the playoffs, 6-8. I thought they'd win 6 games total on the season. And, you know, maybe that could still happen, but I don't expect it to. And I think it's because Kenny has come in here and proven a lot of people wrong, myself included, about how quickly he could actually adjust to the NFL. This is obviously a joke because I do not take it seriously, but there are a lot of people out there that drop it in the comments all over Twitter, the whole 9. I asked Derek, he laughed. Do you think that he's worse than Brock Purdy? Do you think the Steelers messed up by not taking Mr. Irrelevant instead of a first-round quarterback?
You know what that is to me? It's another indictment of Kyle Shanahan's offense, how easy he makes it for quarterbacks. I mean, look at the track record there. Like, not that Matt Ryan was a bad player, but to have him win MVP, what he did with RG3 in Washington. I mean, we could sit here and I could look up his track record and go on and on about the situations that he puts quarterbacks in and the success that they've had. I just think that that's more of an indictment of what they've surrounded him with in the offense that he plays in, as opposed to Kenny Pickett's offense. I know that this is a meme and I saw it on Twitter and stuff like that. But I mean, hey, that's great for Brock Purdy, though. I'm not trying to take away from him. He certainly exceeded expectations for a Mr. Irrelevant in year 1. You know, he's probably done more in this stretch of games than people thought he would in his career. So, you know, he's taken this opportunity and run with it. Great for him, but no, I don't think that, you know, this makes him a better prospect or better player than Kenny Pickett.
Do you think that if the Steelers drafted a quarterback this offseason, which I think is very possible, not like an early quarterback, a late round quarterback, just a backup, you know, get somebody else in there that you don't have to go spend money on. Do you expect there to be like a little bit of tension within the fan base of, you know, maybe a little quarterback controversy that they want to stir up?
Yeah, because it's like they look for it. You know, the same reason that I just mentioned. It's like we had Kenny in there, everybody, but you still had a part of the fan base that never wanted to switch from Mitch. He wasn't the problem. And then you had Kenny in there. Kenny gets hurt. Mitch, you know, throws 3 interceptions in that game, which was very winnable. And then you have people talking about should Mason start this game, who, Mason had been written off by the fan base and everybody wanted to run him out of town. Now he was in a position where people wanted him to start, and then Mitch doesn't turn the ball over and they win. And now it's, should he continue to start over Kenny Pickett?
Yep.
People look for these conversations to happen. So yeah, when the Steelers do add a quarterback in some fashion, because I don't think that do you want to bring Mitch back as the backup at what he's going to cost right now? I don't know that Mason, although he's been very professional this season, would necessarily want to come back into this situation.
He would never. Never.
Yeah.
Would you bring Mitch back?
To me,
would you bring Mitch back as the backup?
I just think that they can get a backup quarterback for cheaper than what he's going to cost. So I don't think that you can. I think you would have to and again, would he even want this to happen? I think that you would have to cut him and then re-sign him at a lower number. And I just don't think that he would do that. I just think you can get another backup quarterback for $2.5-3 million as opposed to $5 to $8.
Yeah,
so
I agree. I agree. I think it'd have to come down to the money. I also don't think Mitch is a guy that wants to come back. You get booed at home in your first ever game in Pittsburgh. I don't know if I'm can't wait to return next season to these guys. Even though, there has been love for Mitch. Mason, there's not a chance. If Mason came back next year, it would blow my mind. There's one image I think of, or one story. My first year in the locker room was Artie Burns' last year with the Steelers. And at the end of the season, there's the locker clean out day where the media gets to go in and talk to these guys. And our Artie is filling a garbage bag with the stuff in his locker. And I went over to talk to him, and he was like, I was like, yo, you got a couple minutes? And he's like, yeah, I'm actually I got to go somewhere real quick. And I'll come back and catch me. And I was like, all right, sounds good. And I talked to him for 2-3 minutes, and essentially the interview, which I did not put out there, was, yes, I'm very excited to get out of here. I have all the respect in the world for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I cannot wait to leave. And I was like, all right, yeah, I get it. And I think Mason's the same way. I think at some point you just realize this isn't the place you want to be anymore. It's time to move on. And, especially the way they've pulled him around. Mason has been a prop doll for the last 2 years, and it just can't be good for the ego. It can't be good for the mentals, any of that. So I would think he's gone. Do you have a quarterback in mind that you've thought of and said maybe these guys could go get him in the offseason?
The only one that I thought of, although he might be looking for another starting job somewhere, would be a Gardner Minshew, who's in Philly right now, and he's going to have.
I knew you were going to say that name.
Games. Yeah, he's going to have a chance to start a couple games now with Jalen Hurts being banged up, which he could parlay that into a Mitch Trubisky potentially opportunity somewhere else, where it's he goes somewhere, they're going to add a quarterback in the draft or something, but maybe he starts a few games at the beginning of the season and can turn that into something else the following one, or obviously, stay there if that guy gets hurt or doesn't pan out and the team's in contention, wants to make a switch. I don't know. I haven't dove into it a ton. I just have a hard time thinking at his price tag we're going to see Trubisky back as the backup next year. So
yeah, I agree. I think it's way too much money. We'll see. Josh Dobbs is a name I've tossed out there a couple of times. I think he
another reunion. Yeah,
just makes sense. You know what I mean? He's a guy that at worst he could come in here and be a third string. At best, he's a quality backup, and he's a super smart guy. Mike Tomlin loves him. I think he helps all around. There is a free agent I want to toss out there that I tossed out this morning. I was listening to Bussin' with the Boys with Will Compton and Taylor Lewan. And, if you haven't listened to that, I think they're good. I think that show is phenomenal, except
hilarious,
for when, dude, it's a great podcast. Although I listened to the Pivot one the other day, that's from a year ago or whatever. Didn't enjoy that at all. There's just too many people in that bus. Ryan Clark talks way too much. I have a lot of respect for Ryan Clark and what he does, but sometimes you just got to sit back. But Taylor was on there talking about his situation with the Tennessee Titans, and he said very, very straightforward, I believe that they're going to cut me. He's a 9-year vet. He's had 2 torn ACLs in the last 3 seasons, which is very concerning, and he's about to get $14 million next year. He expects to be a free agent come February, March. If you're the Steelers and you're just looking for options at left tackle, I believe, is that a name you would consider, or is his injury troubles just too much to go out and reach out?
Yeah, it's tough because you mentioned obviously he's second torn ACL this season. And he also, after the first one, they didn't, I guess, it didn't heal the right way. He had to have a follow-up. He actually missed 5 games the following season due to having to get that cleaned up even more. And he said he still hasn't felt the same. He needs a follow-up this time. he's openly talked about not just his uncertainty with the Titans, but like football in general, being due like 14.7 or whatever it is next season. But with the Titans not having any dead cap, if they cut him, it does seem likely that that is the case. 31 years old. I kind of view it like an Eric Fisher situation last year where like a lot of people were clamoring to take a flyer on him. I can't say that I would mind it, but if you're going into the season with him being like stamped as your left tackle, I think that that's kind of dangerous. Obviously, you have like Dan Moore, who hasn't necessarily taken the next step in year 2 like we would have hoped after a promising rookie season for a 4th round rookie. So maybe because he's in house and you have a fallback option, it could be, more worthwhile or enticing. I just think that the route to go is to finally invest in it in the draft. And I know that we're going to talk about that, but, so I guess I'm on the fence. I don't mind them taking a flyer, but I don't think you can pay him like you're, guaranteed left tackle.
So is that where you would go in the first round of the draft? Is you'd go left tackle over any other position?
So it's tough because I'm of the mindset that you can't just go into the draft and say we're taking this position, because then you could miss out on getting the best possible player by doing so. Give me a situation where Paris Johnson, Peter Skoronski, and Broderick Jones are all gone. I probably wouldn't want the Steelers to go tackle in that situation just to take a tackle, especially because what could be on the board there at like corner or something like that, where there's like 5 or 6 guys that I personally think should go round 1. I don't think that they all do, but then in that case, that could be more beneficial to the Steelers, who are going to have one of the first, 2 or 3 picks in round 2, thanks to the Bears, to take one in that spot. So while tackle was like my ideal situation, I don't think I can go into it thinking they got to take a tackle regardless, because then, the value might not match up.
So where's your line of you have to sign somebody as well as an emergency blanket or like a bridge left tackle to where you're like, okay, I no longer feel, because in my eyes, like second round picks are good. They don't always pan out as a rookie.
Yeah.
Is that like, are you comfortable walking into the season with a second round pick as your starting left tackle for Kenny Pickett, who like that is this is the year you have to invest in your left tackle one way or the other. Absolutely. Because you can't walk into next season risking this guy's health? Or is it like where's your line? Where's that line before it's okay, we also have to have a security blanket?
Well, yeah, it would be if they don't get one in the first round, in my opinion, just because to me, there's only like, and this could be me being a little bit lower on the tackle class as opposed to most people. And granted, I haven't done a ton of tape watching yet on these guys. There's only 3 guys that I would feel really good about plugging and playing at left tackle next year. And those are the 3 names I just mentioned. So what also gives me a little bit of pause, though, and I want to mention this before we continue on with the offensive line talk, is, and I've talked with Ramon Foster, former Steeler, about this before, is you don't want to continue to bring in new pieces on the offensive line, because like we've seen them start to grow here and get some cohesion. They're playing better since the bye week. Clearly, there's still a lack of talent there. And that's why I think, the biggest cap tip of all of the Steelers season could go to Pat Meyer, the offensive line coach, for bringing these guys
100%.
along.
100%.
But to me, you don't want to just continue to bring in new pieces, whether that's through the draft or free agency, just because now you're starting to mess with that continuity that they've gained and that traction they've started to build. So while like tackle to me, and I think it's better to go in the draft just because those guys are still so moldable and coachable. They haven't experienced NFL life yet. If you go out and bring in another outside free agent, they just brought in 2 last year, you're going to have these guys that already have been accustomed to life a certain way in the NFL and probably have their own style of doing things. And you got to start teaching them the ropes, and now they got to be brought in and how things work here and stuff like that. So that to me is why I'm going draft route for the tackle spot. I think it's much easier to get a corner or something like that, like a day one start, or not day one, but a guy that can start immediately in free agency at cornerback or something like that. Like they need help on the D line too. I mean, we could talk about their needs all day, but to me, if they don't get one of those top 3 tackles, I don't think that's a plug and play guy.
I agree. That's a good point. Like your cohesion point is very something I haven't really thought about, because you want the talent and like you want them to mesh, but at the same time you want the right pieces to be meshing, instead of like you can't have Dan Moore Jr. as your left tackle for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
You just can't. But at the same time, you can move him down to guard if they're open to that. I don't know if they are right now, and then you only have to replace one piece to the offensive line instead of 2. But I agree, like you don't, that might remove the whole Taylor Lewan question, because at that point you're thinking, okay, are you going to go another piece to here for 1 year and then plug a rookie in and then have everybody adapt. And at that point, Mason Cole's contract's up, so you have to work with that one at that point. James Daniels' contract's up, so you have to work with that one at that point. You're going to figure out Chooks. You have to figure out your left guard because, Kevin Dotson's not sticking around forever if he even sticks around next season. I agree. I think
to me, that's the one that I think before Dan Moore, I think Kevin Dotson's spot left guard is the one that I would say has the best chance of turning over next year.
You're replacing. I would agree with that. That it has the best shot of being turned over. I think that there is nothing keeping Kevin Dotson in that starting role this year. But where are you personally? Do you replace the left tackle or you replace Kevin Dotson first?
Due to positional value and left tackle being the most important one on the offensive line, that is the one that I'm upgrading. I'm just from what I've heard and what I've seen, it seems like left guard has a better shot of turning over next year than left tackle. And that's probably just because you look at, Kevin Dotson was here a year before Dan Moore Jr. was. So you have another year on Dan Moore's contract.
Yeah, it's very true. I don't know. I think that you replace them both, move on from there. Have you been impressed with Mason Cole and James Daniels enough to keep him?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, James Daniels. And I look at Mason Cole, and he was playing, really well up until he got that foot injury, which I think has kind of been nagging him since then. But, credit to him. I think that he's looked healthier and better the last couple of weeks as this run game started to gain some traction. But to me, those are the two guys, and I just mentioned, bringing them in as outside free agents that have been their two best offensive linemen this year. So, all credit in the world to the scouts for NFL scouts for bringing them in, not obviously the draft ones, but in the organization for finding these guys. James Daniels, to me, I don't know why Chicago let him get away. Mason Cole was kind of an undervalued guy in Minnesota, was kind of like a swing interior offensive lineman type that you didn't think was like a plug and play starter, but could be like a depth option that could play center or guard. But he's panned out very well in my opinion. But I think the thing with him too, and this is interesting too, because people have brought up maybe you get a center and let Mason Cole take that left guard spot from Dotson. So I think that could be another potential option.
I don't know though, because at that point you'd have to really evaluate positions and who's available, because at that point you're getting Kenny adjusted to Mason Cole, and Mason Cole is the vocal point of that offensive line this season. James Daniels is like the leader, the quote unquote leader. He's the guy teaching everybody. He's the veteran presence, but Mason Cole is like the quote. He is a center. You talk to Marquise Pouncey, you're like, oh, that guy plays center. Mason Cole, you're like, oh, that guy plays center. I think that to move him, you're gonna for one have to adjust to a new center if you're Kenny Pickett, and you're going to have to hope that he works out at left guard and that the new center works out instead of just finding a guard. You know what I mean? I feel like you could keep.
No, it's not what I would do. But the Michigan center, which is funny because Mason Cole also comes from Michigan, Oluwatimi, he just won the Remington. People have thrown out his name, like, maybe you bring him in and maybe Mason Cole does stay at center. This guy plays guard. People have just thrown his name around there. Just that's a way to upgrade center or guard, regardless of which one, is playing where. But to your point, like Kenny Pickett this year, he's taking all these reps from Mason Cole. As long as it's working, Mason Cole has worked at center. Why would you even, mess with that?
No, that's exactly how I look at it. You replace Dan Moore, you replace Kevin Dotson, you keep everybody else. You got to make a decision on Chooks. I guess that's the perfect way to end this offensive line talk. Do you, if the season ended today, would you not resign, but would you keep Chooks next season, even though his cap hit takes such a huge spike, or do you get rid of him?
He's literally here. For people that are watching, I'm just drawing a straight line because I don't think there's anywhere up or down to go from him. He just is what he is. It's crazy because he's still relatively young, because he came in as such a young player. But I think he's really good in pass pro, just doesn't offer a lot in the run game. But I think he's fine. And to your point, when they signed that 3-year extension, it was really a 1-year extension, and they would go from there to see how that year one went. But to go back to my point about continuity and wanting to keep pieces in place as long as you can, I don't think he's done anything to necessarily warrant moving on from. And you got to keep some guys, in-house. You just can't keep turning over. I don't think that he's been bad enough to warrant moving on from him. I think he's been fine, and he has been the one guy that's kind of been around, being here since 2018. So he's kind of become, while you mentioned James Daniels coming in and being a vocal leader for them and stuff like that, I think Chooks, because of how long he's been in that locker room And, going back to, again, a conversation I've had with Ramon, has kind of taken on that role as like, the tenured guy.
Yeah, he is. He's definitely like the consistency, I believe, which is good. Like, you definitely want that. There's concerns though. Like, the guy's got absolutely zero ability to run block whatsoever. In my opinion, like, you evaluate this guy week after week and you're like, okay, well, you can't run to the right side because that's just not his game. But a $9 million spike, I don't know, that's concerning to me. It's something that you have to, I think, take into consideration once you have a full roster. Like, once you're looking at, okay, well, we need to do this, we need to do that. It is an inside linebacker more valuable than a just baseline right tackle? How much better can Chooks get? Because like you said, he's what, 24 years old still. He's still very young. Can he improve to a $13 million a year right tackle? I just think there's a lot of questions. I don't expect him to leave, but I think it's very brushed under the rug of how, I don't know, like how his value is not going to match his consistency next season. And because of that, I think it needs to be addressed. Like, I'm a Trooks supporter. He's a terrible interview, so it doesn't help my job. But, when it comes to evaluating offenses, I think he's just fair. Like, he's not a guy that I'd be like, oh, this is a problem with the offense. I think it's the other side of the offensive line. But at the same time, there's a lot of, and your point of the consistency, I think is the biggest thing with the Steelers right now. It's something I haven't thought about. So I'm glad that you brought that up, where it could definitely work in his favor.
I want to say one other thing too about this is I look at, and this isn't, me advocating for overpaying guys during this either, but when nobody's really making any money on the offense, like not just the offensive line, the offense in general, I think it's more palatable for him to be making what he's going to next year. When you still have a guy under a rookie contract at quarterback, you're running back, you haven't paid, Pat yet. Like, Deontay Johnson right now is really the only guy making money on this offense. So,
oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, you have 4 years, 5 years before you have to worry about cap hits if you're Pittsburgh, like, whatsoever. The only issue is how many defensive guys can you sign to major contracts before you're like, okay, This has come back to bite me in the butt. And I think next season they're going to see that, where it's like, okay, Cam's contract is rough and it's maybe not warranted, and Deontay's is maybe not warranted, but they're there and we got to keep them. And they're not guys that you're going to get rid of. So you just have to live with it. But I agree with that. Like, until Kenny is on his second contract or approaching it, you don't have to worry about a thing if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, you could do whatever. You could go sign anybody. That was my argument with everybody was talking, oh, Deebo Samuels is a myth. That'll never happen. I'm like, dude, if they offered him enough money, anything could happen. Anything in the world could happen. Because if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, you have no worries financially until Kenny Pickett's on a second contract. That's just what you could go. You could have signed Chase Claypool in the offseason, Alex Highsmith, and then just been like, all right, well, we have to find scrubs everywhere else, but we don't have a quarterback contract. So we got all the room in the world. And that's just what it happens. Teams win Super Bowls on rookie contracts because of this. And I think the Steelers have to take full advantage of that. All right. Last thing I want to talk about before I let you go is Mike Tomlin addressed the disciplinary actions, concerns, I guess, of the Pittsburgh Steelers in recent weeks. I think it goes far beyond Marcus Allen's the dumbest penalty of all time. Like, that was, oh my God. Yeah. What was your thought there? What was your thought watching the television? Because, like, you saw the flag and then they showed the replay. I wasn't in Carolina, and you're like, is he in? There's a coach right there. That's a coach's huddle. He's on the sideline. What are you doing? What were your thoughts?
So I wish it was like all live, because they came back from commercial and then we realized that there was a flag thrown. They show the replay of Marcus over there talking to them. But it's such a Marcus Allen thing to do that. I mean, for whatever, like, he is just so juiced up during literally every snap that he's on the field, because it's like maybe 10 a game that he gets the opportunity. Yeah, it's just such an opportunity, like, for him to just be a part of something when he, like I said, he only is playing like 8 to 10 snaps a game. But like you said, literally the dumbest thing that I've ever seen a player do. And, for him to, because the Steelers had just gotten the Panthers in a position where they're about to punt. Luckily, it didn't turn to 7, just 3 points, but still, it should have never happened. And you almost started to feel like that could be a turning point of the game, because then the Steelers do get the ball back after that. They punt it back to Carolina. Carolina goes down and scores. And it's just like, now it's a 1-possession game at that point. And it almost turned this game to, where we would have been on the edge of our seats thinking Carolina's got a chance to tie it here and send it to overtime. And Marcus Allen, it's just he doesn't bring enough value to the team to do that. I mean, this is a guy that was already cut before the season and brought back. So on the opposite side of Deontay Johnson, who took a penalty earlier in the game for taunting, it's like, but Deontay Johnson is,
that penalty
Deontay Johnson
should not have been thrown.
I agree, but that's people are going to probably try to argue that. He's providing value to the team where it's like Marcus Allen maybe makes a special teams tackle here and there, but again, a guy that was already cut earlier in the season and brought back, like it's just for him to do that.
He's the 53rd member of the team. They caught him at the beginning of the year, and he was walking around the locker room telling everybody, I'll be back tomorrow. They told me I'll be back tomorrow. You want to know why he'll be back tomorrow? Because they knew not a soul in the NFL was going to touch him. They were just going to let him walk through waivers, and then they'd re-sign him because they had to put guys on IR. I mean, he does not hold the ground to go do something like that. And then, I never expected Mike Tomlin to come out here and be like, oh yeah, I scolded him and this is the disciplinary or whatever. Like, right. I never expected that. But then Ray Fittipaldo of the Post-Gazette comes out on the Fan and says, oh, he said on the sideline, keep trucking. And I'm like, what does that mean? You just keep trucking where? To the penalties? Because that is not allowed to happen whatsoever. I think just the big question is like, do you think that there's a grip here? I've been in locker rooms of years past where as little things like the music that, I'm not going to say his name, but somebody decided to just let that out there when it was 2 months old and literally the smallest deal of all time, where Marcus is like refusing to not play music during media sessions. And like, I get it. It's your locker room, whatever. Ben would walk over there and shut his music off. I've been in a locker room where people have tried to play music and Ben has literally walked over, shut it off, walked away. I've heard horror stories of Troy like that. He like smashed radios. Like these guys were just like we are focused on football. Marcus comes in here. He's got a big issue, whatever. And then this happens, is there like, I don't know. Like, are you worried that like the 53rd guy on the roster, nobody can have a grip of him? Like you should have a grip of this guy. This guy should never be an issue whatsoever. Is it a problem that he is? And I'm not trying to say that it is. I just want your opinion.
Yeah, I don't think that we have a pulse on what those conversations behind closed doors are like. I think that we have an idea and we like, social media is going to paint it in a certain way that like Tomlin doesn't have control of this guy or anything like that, just because he won't like throw him under the bus publicly. But that doesn't mean he's not having conversations with him in private about, not doing these things. I think if we see him go out there, if we see him go out there again, like next week and do something similar, then it starts to become an issue. Like, I think when you get to the point of it being like a repeat offender, then that's when you start to.
What if it's a repeat offender of the team? Like, what is it? And again, I'm not trying to persuade an argument one side or the other. Just laying out what's happened this season. George Pickens has been kicked out of a game for a very frustrating thing, and it was at the end of the game, so it's whatever. But he was he made it very known. Nobody said a word to me about it. It was whatever. Then he freaks out coming off to the sideline and. No. You could go farther back than that. Deontay Johnson and Mitch Trubisky are fighting at halftime, so much so that you have to bench your starting quarterback for a rookie, and that is the worst way to possibly toss Kenny Pickett into the NFL. And then George Pickens freaks out coming out the sideline. That is totally he made that known again. That's the media. The media is the wrong one here. It is not me. I didn't do anything wrong. Nobody said anything to me. And then this happens. Like, is it like that's a lot of things? It's a lot of things in one season to be like, oh, okay, yeah, this is fine. This is no big deal.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think that it definitely is something. I just don't think it's as big of a deal as people are going to make it. It's something for sure.
Oh, people are. I think I'm the only one making a big deal out of it, and I don't want to make like such a huge deal out of it. But at the same time, like, I think that 2 was a pattern.
Here's the thing.
There's 6.
Here's the thing is I think with you covering the Steelers, obviously you see a lot more than, the fans are going to see with a team like that. Yeah. And that is, the team that you see the most of. I think things like this are relatively common around the NFL. and
Okay.
we just don't see it because you're covering the Steelers. You're not covering.
Yeah.
Use the Patriots because people want to use them as the example because of Belichick. I think that there's a lot more that goes on with the Patriots that just doesn't get out to the public or you don't see and isn't talked about for that reason.
That's very true. That's a very good point. That's a very good point, that I am just so tunnel visioned to the Steelers that I don't see the problems around the NFL. You could be spot on. And like in years past, I've let everything go. Like the AB nonsense, I thought he's handled well. I saw something, the Blunt Bros in here of, Le'Veon and LeGarrette. And, I didn't think I thought that was a whatever type situation. The Juju TikTok dances, whatever type situation. Maybe it is. Maybe it's just me.
And I think to your point, AB has started us to the point where it's like, and we came in with some concerns about, George Pickens non-football stuff. Yep. So it's when you start to see some flashes of those things kind of seeping through, you start to get a little bit worried. Like, okay, we really got to like rein this guy in because he is a very special, gifted athlete. Hopefully he can reach that ceiling and not get in his own way of doing so.
Yeah. And I don't want to bring this in. And I think at some point the Steelers are going to watch one of these and realize that I've given out this information and have a huge problem with it, but I do not care. I'm always a ask for forgiveness instead of permission type of guy. I think a big issue with George Pickens that concerns me is that he is in the corner with Devin Bush in the locker room, and there is nobody there to like kind of guide him away from the nonsense that Devin Bush tosses out there. And I'm a big critic of Devin Bush. Like, I think that, his attitude towards the media and towards how to handle himself in the NFL is all wrong. And I think that George is like, I've seen the change. Like when George came in here, he was very like, I came on here and was very like adamant about, oh, George is a good dude. Like this guy's very polite. He calls you sir, you know what I mean? Like he's just a genuine guy. And I've seen that just decline, and I think part of it's the media. I think part of it's us like having to constantly talk about how bad the Steelers are and what the issues are and the quarterback situation and blah, blah, blah. And then his issues as well. But I also think part of it's like the people that you surround yourself with in that locker room are the people that are going to mold you. And Kenny Pickett got put next to Cam Hayward. I think that's a huge upside. And George Pickens got put next to Devin Bush. And I don't know, there's a reputation in that corner that is long foreseen. That was the AB corner. That was I'm not going to name all the guys, but it's that corner. There's a name for that corner. I won't say it out loud, but it's got a bad reputation.
Of AB's past is still haunting it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's a lot, and it goes far before that. The players that have been there have just always been like, yikes, like Martavius Bryant. You know what I mean? Like there's just been those guys that have been concerning figures. And I think George is there, and I would like to see him move away from that. Because just like you said, dude, there's so much upside here. Like this dude's going to be such a superstar in the NFL. Do not let poor attitude beat you in the NFL. And it will these days. Like social media is so present that, you're bad. People are going to get word of it, and you don't want that out there. You just don't. Oh God. That's I'm getting this guy out of here. There's a guy in the comments who's just been going way too hard and just not a fan.
What is it? Is it like Tomlin related with what we're talking about with?
No. First he was like hoping that Kenny Pickett got a concussion, and now he's, pulling out another thing that I don't agree with.
You know what? Wait, yeah. I want to ask you about something because I saw this on Twitter today too, like shutting down Kenny Pickett for the season because of having two concussions. I think that's something that like people don't talk. You hear concussion and it's just like such a scary thing with the information that we have now, and like rightfully so, because any head injury, we know the long-term effects of that and stuff like that. But I think the other thing that like needs to be taken in consideration anytime that you talk about a concussion is these are like non-linear injuries. You could wake up one day and feel concussion symptoms, wake up the next day and feel completely fine. That's why it's so important to rely on, the medical information, the team doctors and stuff like that. Anybody that isn't around this guy and evaluating him should not have an opinion, in my opinion, on how the Steelers should be handling this. So, like, to just say, because this guy's had two concussions in his rookie season, he shouldn't play again. Like this year,
it goes both ways. It's the same guys that are stirring the whole. You don't know how many people I've had to like just fire back on and be like, look, I get that you heard that from somewhere. This is not firsthand information. trying to tell me that Kenny Pickett was not diagnosed with a concussion his first time around. Like, he wasn't diagnosed. He was just put in the concussion protocol. No, the Pittsburgh Steelers said word for word, Kenny Pickett has a concussion. He is out of the football game with a concussion. Didn't say protocol, didn't say evaluated, said out with a concussion. And it goes both ways. Like, dude, if you're not a doctor, don't talk brain injuries. Like, your brain's bleeding. I have no idea what's going on up there. I don't know. If I had a concussion tomorrow, I'd be going to work the next day and I'd be going to the gym the day after that. You want to know why? Because I'd have no idea how to handle the situation. And I bet you it'd be all wrong. These guys have paid so many doctors. I think people overlook that part too. Like, they're like, oh, the team doctor. No, go walk inside one of these facilities. There is a hospital. There is a literal 7, 8 doctor tables, you know what I mean? 15 people in there working on players, 1 billion different machines. Like, no,
yeah,
there's, they know what you're talking about. Everybody else, no way. And you should never shut down a player because of, if it's health related and your season's over, that's fine. If it's like, oh, we don't want to risk a third concussion in a season, I get that too. But, if you're just being over cautious, the season's still on the line. Like, what are you going to do there? You know,
no, I just don't think it's something for a fan with no knowledge of the situation on a day-to-day basis should have an opinion on. That was my point.
No, I totally agree with that one. And that's how it is. Every medical procedure should be that way. You know what I mean? Like, let the doctors do their thing, follow the updates. Don't ever give your opinion. It's a rule to live by. Yeah, Anthony knows what's up. We're all couch coaches here. All right, before I let you go, last question I got for you. Pittsburgh Steelers, Brian Bacco. Shout out to Brian Bacco. He told me this the other day. I had to bring it up here. Pittsburgh Steelers, week 18, already eliminated from the playoffs. They're home against the Cleveland Browns. Overtime. Okay, this is the situation. Overtime. Tied game. The Cleveland Browns, they take it down, kick a field goal. Okay. The Steelers take it down now. And you got to remember, it's overtime. Clock's ticking down. They're at the 2-yard line, 1-yard line, whatever. 1 second left on the clock. If you're Mike Tomlin, and at this point, you win out. You're 8-8. You're sitting there at 8-8. You're Mike Tomlin. Are you kicking a field goal? Going 8-8-1, keeping that streak alive? Or are you trying to win the game?
No, I'm trying to win. Well, first off, not that this would necessarily play into the Steelers' minds, but you said the Steelers are eliminated. Are the Browns also eliminated? Or if the Browns win, do they have a shot at the playoffs?
No, let's go. Both teams are eliminated. This nothing's on the line except for Tomlin's winning streak.
Yeah. So, Tomlin has opened, that's not the bar. He does not care about being 500. The players might for him to try to keep that streak going. I don't think that being 500 is that big of an importance to him. And I think in a situation like that, I would personally like to see them go for it. I'm trying to get into his mind though, just because while, they preach aggressiveness and not living in their fears, but we see him go against that literally all the time.
Every single time.
Yeah. I would go for the touchdown. I think they kick the field goal.
I'm so happy that you answered that way, because when Brian asked me this, I said, well, you got to go for it. You can't go up to the podium after the game and be like, yeah, we kicked the field goal. We thought that tying the game was the best option. We didn't want to end. You never know when that tie is going to come back to help you in the future. Some nonsense thing like that. But I was like, there's no, you can't do that. How do you go into the locker room and be like, that a boy, guys? Yeah. Way to end it on a neutral note there. Way to just tie a game.
Do anything for that. No result really does anything for them.
No. It's just the streak. It's just.
And honestly, if you're and I'm never going to be this type of person. I'm anti-tank. I want to win every game, regardless of if it helps draft position or not. But theoretically, if you're already eliminated from playoff position, winning that game only hurts you. So
yeah, true. Does he pull that excuse out? Well, we wanted to help our draft stock. I couldn't. I'm glad that you answered that, because my first thought was there's no way they would. Yeah,
I could literally be talked into anything here. I could be talked into them punting the ball back to Cleveland and ending the game.
They could do that. They would do
lose, and
Like, you know, clock man, it was important to get Presley we had to evaluate Presley for next season. So that's just how it is. Wow. I'm going to clip this as soon as we get off of this. And that's going to be the first thing on YouTube is Zach Smith believes that
the Steelers should
they'd
punt.
kick it. Maybe they'd kick it. Wow. All right. Well, I appreciate you, my man. We're heading out of here. Thank you, everybody, for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to find us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk, anywhere you get your audio podcasts. Zach, I want you to plug all your stuff around the 412, your Twitter, the whole nine.
Yeah, you can find me personally on anything at Zachary Smith PGH. That's Twitter, Instagram, even TikTok.
A little TikTok action there.
Yeah. And then around the 412,
just so everybody knows, I'm sorry, just so everybody knows,
yes.
Zach's TikToks they're not funny. They're not the breakdown of analysis. This man dances. This man does the dances. So
it's become a mixture. Like there's a lot of anti Matt Canada TikToks now that are on there as well. So but yeah, love to dance. And then around the 412 also, that's at around the 412 on everything, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok there as well. And then our YouTube, search around the 412, like and subscribe. You can find us on any audio platform as well.
Yep, no doubt. And I'm going to make him promise that I go on there soon. So everybody make sure to stay tuned for that one. Man,
maybe you could show up. Maybe you could show up in a suit again, like you did on draft night.
On draft night. Hey, look, I was the best looking guy in my apartment building that night. Okay. I went to the vending machine like 4 times just so I could make sure I walked out of my house. And I wore the pants and everything all night long. I felt fantastic. Little does anybody know that draft night is so crazy that you are slamming Red Bulls and energy drinks like there's no tomorrow. And that's when Bang energy drinks like just hit the market. So I drank like 3 of those that day. Like I wouldn't even say that day. Like within like a 4-hour period, I slammed like 3 Bang energy drinks. At that time, it was like 10 o'clock at night. And I was sitting on that camera, pouring sweat. I was shaking, and I was just like, all right, keep it calm. Let's go. Let's get it going here. And then I was talking a mile a minute. It was a great time. And then I just, went for a little walk in the apartment building, make sure everybody in Wilkinsburg knew what was up. Knew that,
love it.
I owned a suit, but all right, everybody, I'll be back on tomorrow with Steven. Make sure to subscribe to us, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk, anywhere you get your audio podcasts. Like I said, enjoy your day. Peace.